June, Pride Month. I can't speak for all Catholics, but from the conversations I've had with many, this time of the year can feel tense. It's like we want to love our brothers and sisters in secular LGBT plus spaces, but we also don't want to affirm sin wherever it might be promoted. At the same time, we don't really resonate with the typical rage-filled Catholic responses we see online or hear in some homilies during June, those that inflate culture war mindsets and fighting the gay agenda narratives. So where's the line? How should Catholics respond to Pride Month? So for disclaimer's sake, I want to start by saying that what I'm sharing in this video are my personal thoughts based on my own experiences and the theological knowledge that has helped me arrive at these conclusions. These are my prudential reflections and advice, not official church teaching or doctrine. You are completely free to take or leave my input as you see fit. Thank you so much. With that said, let's take a moment to reflect on Catholicism and Pride Month. Now for starters, just foundationally speaking about how I think we as Catholics should respond to Pride Month, I personally don't think it's a coincidence that June, the month commonly celebrated as Pride Month, also happens to be the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the church's liturgical calendar. Like, of course, right? This is the time of the year when, culturally, we as disciples are challenged to love a population that has often felt wounded and neglected by the church. And it just so happens to fall within a liturgical season when we're explicitly invited to reflect on the Sacred Heart of Jesus, to grow in devotion and to ponder his merciful, loving heart. The same Sacred Heart that bleeds for everybody, regardless of sexual orientation or experience of gender. The same Sacred Heart that extends its merciful gaze even to society's most outcasted and misunderstood. The same Sacred Heart that meets us in our own brokenness and sinfulness and doesn't hesitate to do the same for every human being. It's almost as if, in his providential goodness, God has blessed this time of year for the church to practice loving our neighbors, especially those who seem most different from us, with a heart truly like his. So with that said, I think the first and foremost way we as Catholics should respond to Pride Month is by rooting ourselves spiritually, by actively seeking out the Lord in prayer throughout June, asking him to give us hearts like his Sacred Heart, hearts that love deeply and bleed for others, including for our brothers and sisters with LGBT plus experiences, so that we too can love with his same love and look at them and at ourselves with his same mercy. We're so quick to defend the Sacred Heart of Jesus, especially in June, but how often do we actually ask him to give us hearts like his? Ultimately, what we need are heart transplants, not just during Pride Month, but 24/7, 365 days a year. Hearts of flesh, on fire for his creation, not hearts of stone, closed off to certain people or groups. Additionally, I think Catholics should respond to Pride Month by being willing to do a lot more listening. I'm guilty of this myself, but we're often so quick to speak, right? To proclaim truth about human sexuality, to defend doctrine on God's design for marriage, and so on. Now, there's definitely a time and place for those kind of discussions, but too often, we're eager to speak out against our LGBT plus identifying neighbors, yet rarely willing to actually listen to them and hear their stories. And listening means hearing about what it's been like for them to navigate life with their experiences of sexuality and or gender. It means even hearing about what Pride Month means to them and why it might matter to them. Because believe it or not, and I know this might challenge some of our preconceived notions, not everyone sees or celebrates Pride Month as simply a justification or endorsement of sexual deviancy. Many actually trace it back to real-life historical events that exposed and resisted shame and objectively unjust discrimination. Discrimination that, in some cases, still happens today. Aren't these stories worth hearing? Especially when the Catholic Church explicitly calls for a posture of compassion and sensitivity toward people attracted to the same sex, and affirms that unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. At the very least, I think we should be willing to put down our culture war swords for a minute and engage with these groups by truly listening to their stories, their hurts, and their hearts. Finally, I think Catholics should respond to Pride Month by being much more aware of the witnesses we give. After all, it matters how we as Christians speak about our brothers and sisters with LGBT plus experiences, both in June and beyond. Online, from the pulpit, in our homes, our words, our actions, and the messages we communicate can make someone feel either welcome or unsafe to come to the Lord's table. It's like that famous prayer often attributed to St. Teresa of Avila, "Christ has no hands, no feet, no eyes now but yours." We, his disciples, reflect Christ to the world, for better or for worse. And too often during Pride Month, we see Catholics and Christians reflecting a wrathful, disgusted, and defensive version of Christ, rather than the Christ who looks with tenderness, mercy, and profound love at every human person, regardless of their sin. Now, I want to be clear, again, there is a proper time and place for the wrath of God, but when it comes to truly evangelizing in the modern age and attracting people to the heart of Jesus, I can't help but challenge us to ask, what will actually make the world want God and his plans for them? Is it emphasizing a God who refuses to approach a group that has already felt at arm's length from the church? Or is it prioritizing a God who isn't scandalized by any sinner or any sin? A God who deeply desires to meet each beloved person exactly where they are amidst their experiences. In conclusion, how Catholics should respond to Pride Month ultimately comes down to love, humility, and witness. First, we ought to root ourselves spiritually, asking Jesus to give us hearts like his Sacred Heart, hearts that love deeply, bleed for others, and see every human person with mercy and compassion. Second, we are called to listen, really listen, to the experiences and stories of our LGBT+ identifying neighbors, seeking to understand their joys, struggles, and histories without judgment or preconception. And third, we must be mindful of our witness, recognizing that our words, actions, and attitudes reflect Christ to the world and can either welcome or alienate those we are called to love. Pride Month challenges us to move beyond mere statements of belief and to embody the heart of Jesus in tangible ways. It asks us to step away from culture war postures, to set aside fear or defensiveness, and to engage others with respect, dignity, and care, just as the church calls us to do. By prioritizing mercy, listening, and authentic witness, we can begin to reflect the fullness of Christ's love in our lives, both in June and throughout the year. May we earnestly seek to accurately communicate the Sacred Heart of Jesus to the whole world, both during Pride Month and beyond. And may the Lord have mercy on us for the ways we fail to truly defend and honor his heart for all people. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, please teach us to love better as you do.